liberator, but you can't murder liberation. You can murder revolutionary, but you can't murder revolution. And you can murder a freedom fighter, but you can't murder freedom.
You're tapped in, so let's get right to it. So, according to reports, Vladimir Zelensky, president of Ukraine, said in a post on X on Saturday that Ukraine had achieved strong results from long-range strikes on the Caspian Sea, hitting ships carrying military cargo from Iran. All right, now including a warship along with those cargo ships. That was Saturday, again, July 25th. That report came in and he verified it as such. Now, it's worth noting that Iran's response came a day later, with Iranian officials claiming one crew member was killed and 3 injured in a drone strike on a vessel carrying cargo from a Russian port. So the full incident timelines, it runs roughly, between July 25th and the 26th. But here's the thing. Starting with the Caspian Sea strike, a ship leaving a Russian port, Iranian ship leaving Russian port, headed back to Iran. Why would Zelensky, Ukraine, strike that ship? Leaving. All right. Now, in Zelensky's own words about hitting ships carrying Iranian military cargo to Russia, now this is 1,000 kilometers from Ukrainian territory. That's the thing here. This is 1,000 kilometers from Ukrainian territory. That distance, that's a long distance. Ukraine just struck targets over 600 miles from its own border. Why? Why would Ukraine do that? That's a question a lot of people aren't asking. Why is it that Ukraine saw it necessary to strike an Iranian ship leaving a Russian port? It makes no sense, but the question begs to be answered. What's behind that? All right. And we're going to get to that. We're going to get to that. Trust me, we're going to get to that. Now, how did we get here? How did we get here? Iran leaving a Russian port, carrying who knows what. All right. But first things first, February 28, 2026, that's when the U.S. and Israel strikes killed KHAMENEI. KHAMENEI was killed in those strikes on February 28, along with over 160 school children and other people. Now, the targeting also included Iran's nuclear and military sites, and that was supposedly the war's origin point, However, we did hear about the killing of these school children, over 160 to be exact. That's a cold thing. But anyway, the Russian, let me get back to the Iran and Russian drone pipeline. That's also an issue. All this stuff is going to converge. It's interconnected if you really think about it. Now, Iran is supplying Shaheed drones to Russia for the Ukraine war since, let's say, 2022. Iran has been sending those Shaheed drones over there, and those Shaheed drones are very devastating. All right. Now, why that made Ukraine a natural, if unlikely, partner for the U.S. Once direct U.S. aid to Ukraine was paused is significant. See, there's a game being played here. The U.S., Ukraine, Russia, Iran, Israel, and others. There's something going on here, and they're all connected. They're all involved. Again, this thing started February 28th. All right. It started February 28th. Iran had, before that strike, been sending Russia Shaheed drones by the hundreds and thousands, but just sending them to them. These drones are very effective. Very effective. All right. It's putting Ukraine, those drones put Ukraine in a position where very soon, or in due time, they're going to end up losing this conflict or that war in Ukraine against Russia. Western states do not want that to happen. So how do they play? How do they play it? All right. We got to stop Iran from sending these drones over here, because these drones are helping Russia to defeat Ukraine. But how do we do that? How do we do that? See, Ukraine end up being, Ukraine is a puppet. I mean, they're being utilized for reasons a lot of us don't want to acknowledge, or a lot of people won't explain. This thing with Russia has really nothing to do with Ukraine. Ukraine is just the fall guy in this. War was brought to their doorstep because of Western countries. And they knew this would occur. In any respect, though, Ukraine now is going to be used again. Will be used again against Iran. Let's say a proxy for Western countries, other than the United States and Israel. Okay, Israel's not really considered a Western country, but now Western countries can find their way involved or becoming involved in this conflict. All right. Now, look, Ukraine gets pulled into this war intentionally. They're told, hey, these Shaheed drones are killing you guys. Russia is receiving these Shaheed drones from, guess who? Iran. That's your problem. You have to stop these shipments. You have to do it. We can't do it for you, So March 2026, the U.S. requests Ukrainian help in this Iran-U.S.-Israel war. They request their help against Iran drone strikes after holding direct aid to Ukraine. See, the drones that Iran utilizes are very devastating. They can't stop them. However, Ukraine has worked up a drone in and of itself that is used to strike the Shaheed drone with some success. United States and Israel recognizes it's okay. We got to get Ukraine into this. We got to get them involved. So they request the help of Ukraine. Zelensky sends his military experts to the Gulf. He dispatches Rustem Umerov to discuss selling Ukrainian interceptor drones to who wants to buy them? Israel, U.S., Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, UAE, Kuwait. Who wants these drones? All right. You get the picture. All right. Now, let me go back to the Caspian Sea because that is significant. So the Caspian Sea strikes, again, they happen on July 25th. Ukraine hit a Iran to Russia supply ship directly. And again, this attack took place over 600 miles way away from the Ukrainian border. Okay, over 1,000 kilometers away. All right. Now, Iran's response, Foreign Minister Aragachi, he's calling it something that cannot go unanswered. And as we know today, they have responded and they've made it clear that you started something you can't finish, Ukraine. So now, based upon who orchestrated all this, it will show whether or not they're going to get what they want. You know what I mean? Now Ukraine is involved in another war, which really makes no sense unless you really think about it. Ukraine has something the United States, Israel, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, UAE, Bahrain, all of them needs. Those are those interceptor drones. So we can look and see as to whether or not Ukraine will start to get that aid Trump denied him some months back. But so that occurred. Now, here's the convergence. And I actually already showed you the convergence of this thing, It's some crazy work, people. It's crazy work. Here, let me show you this. Now, this, again, all started with the U.S. striking Iran, the U.S. and Israel striking Iran, killing KHAMENEI and others as well in that strike the very first day, over 160 school children. All right, that did occur. And there's no denying that happened. United States are trying to say, well, it wasn't a Tomahawk, but everyone knows that it was. There's footage of the Tomahawk missile actually striking right before it struck the compound. So I don't know how they're going to continue. United States deny. Same with Israel. That's what they do. Now, that took place. And again, we have to take into consideration that a lot of what is happening is actually being orchestrated These are behind the scene plans. These guys sit up and they try to figure out ways and means to, I think, involve other players into this war, because this is something, I think this is a fight that Israel and the United States picked that they cannot win without actually doing something very drastic and dramatic, like maybe dropping the nuke. That's the only way this thing is going to stop. So the United States is saying, okay, wait a minute, let's find someone else to bring into this conflict. We need to find someone else to bring into this conflict, all right? And trust and know they're going to find someone. They're going to manipulate someone, Ukraine, to get involved in this conflict. Ukraine already has its hands full. So them jumping in or becoming involved in the Iranian, U.S. and Israeli war, again, that makes no sense. Not on the face of it, you know what I mean? Now, whatever's being discussed behind the scenes is something totally different. We don't know what that is, what those negotiations entail, what's being offered, what's on the end of that stick. You know, that's the truth. So now this convergence, why it matters, okay? Trump hosting both Zelensky and Netanyahu at the White House just recently. Had them both, met with them separately, of course, but met them both in the White House. That's a pure indication now that Ukraine will become involved in this war with Iran. This is being orchestrated by people in Israel as much as people in Washington, D.C., all right, or wherever they are, all right? So this happened, this meeting happened the same week, same day, but separately, all right? Now, this is a visual as well as a symbolic statement. It's a statement being made. The two wars are now one. The two wars are now one. That's what I say. Two wars are now one at one negotiating table. All right? It's not hard, you guys. It's not hard. Now, what Ukraine gains as a, as a reward for this, let's put it like that, it probably is an unofficial ally, Now, Iran getting weakened while Russia's own resources are stretched, that's pretty much on the table. Yet Russia may very well be running out of resources from this protracted war. It's been 3 years now, probably longer since this thing started. Yeah, their supplies, you have all these sanctions and bans on them, so they're not able to actually use a lot of money to recoup or rebuild a whole lot of what they've already spent and used or was destroyed by Ukraine. That's a fact. Now, what Iran loses is a second active front, plus reputational costs of being seen as Russia's drone supplier. But that's no mystery. That's been no secret. Iran has been supplying Russia with these Shaheed drones. Everyone knows that. So I don't think they lose any face in that respect. But however, they're now confronted with another front, Ukraine, and they've taken action already, and they've let Ukraine know you started something you're not going to be able to finish. Now, we have yet to see how this is going to play out. As well, we don't know to what extent Trump is going to bring Zelensky into this conflict. What role they'll play exactly, other than what they've already done by, striking that Iranian cargo ship. There's a lot at stake here. There's a lot at stake here. Now, that being said, as a result of all this, how will the American people fare as a result of all this? What now can we look forward to? And it must be said that the American people are not satisfied, are not pleased, in the very least, with what the United States is doing in terms of this war with Iran, and the fact that it seems as though Israel is the reason why the United States is involved in this war in the first place. And so the American people are asking, how's that even possible? Wait a minute. Israel's been starting stuff over there for the longest time. Israel's now what a lot of people consider genocide. They're committing genocide against the Palestinian people. So Americans are like, hey, wait a minute, something's wrong here. Why is this even happening? How are we involved in this? When everything you guys said about Iran back in 2025, when you struck their nuclear power station plants and facilities were struck by bunker bombs. They used those bunker bombs and said, hey, we demolished that place. So Iran is not in the process any longer of making a nuclear weapon. All right. That was last year. Come back this year and strike again. And now to this day, we still hear the same narrative. We can't allow Iran to have a nuclear weapon. And if that's the excuse as to why, this conflict is waging on the way it is, then, hey, wait a minute, shouldn't it end by now? Because, by all accounts, at least from you guys' mouth, everything has been destroyed and obliterated. So why is there still a conflict? Most are saying because Israel is not happy with the fact that the regime is still in place. Israel needs the regime to be dismantled totally, completely, utterly, done away with. The regime is a thorn in the side of Israel's plans, which label as the Greater Israel Plan or idea. So the fact that Iran is still there presents a problem. And so they're not willing to allow America to back out of this situation. So they keep creating new reasons as to why the United States has to stay involved. It went from nuclear weapons to, they're murdering their people, to the Strait of HORMUZ. They have too many missiles and missile launchers. It's a threat. We have to do away with this. So the excuses keep evolving. And that's only because Israel cannot allow America to lead this war until their objective is completed. And that is the total annihilation and destruction of the IRGC and that regime, the Iranian regime, period. Until that happens, we can look forward to this war continuing to go on as well as escalate. And this is what we're seeing with Ukraine's involvement in this conflict. That is an escalation to this war. Now, and again, how will the American people fare as a result of this? Let's see. How will the American people fare as a result of this conflict? Okay, let's drop this up in here. And let's hear what they have to say. Okay. Now, this is courtesy of CNN. And CNN had a lot to say about this whole situation, okay, in terms of the war itself and the moves Trump is making, as well as Trump has had options, off ramps to get out of this conflict. But again, the excuses as to why he's staying keep evolving. All right. Now, again, what this means for ordinary people: oil prices, all right, groceries, certain bills going up, insurances, things of that nature. We're going to be hit with this. Oil comes out of the Strait of Hormuz. But the funny thing is, the United States said, well, we don't get any oil from there. We have all our oil. We took Venezuela's oil. So how is this affecting us? How can this possibly affect us then if America gets no oil from that region? To top it off, they got the largest oil reserve in the world, so they say, Venezuela. How is it then that the American people are suffering from higher gas prices? Something we should be asking ourselves. So oil, the Strait of Hormuz is a risk. They're not willing to go up in there, but they'll sit the ships out in the Persian Gulf and, call themselves having some type of blockade. It's really piracy is what they're doing over there. Global shipping, all these things supposedly are tied to this conflict. All right. So the economic ripple will be felt by Americans as a result of a conflict that we ought not be involved in, you know? We ought not be involved in this. All right? So let me show you what they're saying here on CNN.
President Trump seems so politically tone deaf. I mean, this is what we're talking about, saying, oh, you know what, it's worth it to me. You know, I'm not actually taking part in the midterm elections. But just look at this. Just look at these numbers here. Is the Iran war worth higher gas prices? And I will note this, obviously, this poll wasn't conducted in the last 24 hours. So this doesn't even take into account that most recent peak. Take a look here. 65% of Americans were talking.
That's 2/3 of the American population are saying, no, this is not worth it. 2/3. That number would stop anyone with any political sense, you know, or political ambition. They would stop cold. So, okay, let me find another way. Let me get out of this situation because I'm hurting not just myself, but my party. Trump doesn't care.
Talking 2 in 3 say, no, no, no. The Iran war is not, in fact, worth the higher gas prices. So Donald Trump is here on one end saying, you know what it is. And the American people are here on the other end completely disagreeing with him on this issue of the Iran war and higher gas prices. The American people feel the pain at the pump, and they very much disagree with the president of the United States.
Clearly, the blame for the war kind of on the president, but is it wider than that? Is the GOP also getting hit as we march towards the midterms?
This is exactly right. You know, Donald Trump isn't technically on the ballot come November, but you know who is on the ballot in the midterm elections? The Republicans in Congress. And if there's any fantasy that is out there that somehow what is going on, the blame that's being put on the White House won't funnel its way down ballot, well, I'm here to extinguish that false belief, because just take a look here. Okay, and again, this is before the most recent uptick in the gas prices. Blame which party for higher gas prices during the war? Blame the Democrats? Just 27% blame the Democrats. Look at this lion's share. Again, this 2 in 3 number. 2 in 3 Americans blame Republicans if forced to choose between the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. Which party do they blame for the higher gas prices? They blame the Republican Party. So all that pain that Americans feel that they are putting the blame on Donald Trump, that idea that it won't funnel its way down the ballot, as I said at the beginning, it is a false belief. It simply put isn't true. Republicans, it is quite unlikely that they will be able to escape the blame that is being put on the White House when it comes to the ballot box come this November. It's proportionately affecting and making inflation go higher. And just take a look. This is just nutter butter. This is movement that kills parties, that kills their electoral aspirations. Trusted more on inflation. You go back to October of 2024. The reason Donald Trump won that second term in the White House was because he was more trusted on inflation by 6 points over Kamala Harris. The number one issue, the cost of living, inflation, is still the number one issue when it comes to Americans. But who do they trust now more when it comes to inflation? Look at this in the cost of living. Most recent Fox News poll, Democrats trusted by 10 points on inflation, a complete switcheroo from what we saw in 2024. Remember, inflation was what kicked Joe Biden and the Democrats out of power, kept Kamala Harris from getting to the White House. Now, this same issue may in fact be what turns Republicans out of power in Washington, D.C., at least when it comes to the House, maybe the Senate as well. If these numbers hold, it's very hard to imagine that Republicans are able to hold on to the House of Representatives.
Okay, now,
look at these numbers.
Let's keep in mind also that Trump made his way back in because of the promises he made. You know, the promises he made. And a lot of people bought into that. A lot of people were hoodwinked. They were fooled into believing that Trump had the interests of the people at heart and in his mind. Come to find out, it was the opposite. He's 2 years into his term, a little bit more than 2 years, and the people are livid. A lot of Republicans, I would probably say most Republicans who voted for him are just upset. And, you know, with good reason, all right? Now, I don't know.
On Israel, the net favorability, they're all negative. They're all negative. Ipsos, minus 10 points. Fox, minus 11 points. MU, Marquette University Law School.
Let's get this from the beginning.
Switch around.
Look at these numbers on Israel, the net favorability. They're all negative. They're all negative. Ipsos, minus 10 points. Fox, minus 11 points. MU, Marquette University Law School Law poll. Look at that, minus 20 points. Pew Research Center, minus 23 points. Negative, 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 negative.
Now, keep in mind, this war, or America's involvement in this war with Israel, was brought to the table, was brought from Israel to the United States. Say, hey, you guys got to get in this war with us. They're going to make weapons. They're going to have nukes. They're going to this. They're going to that. We got to stop them. If we don't stop them next week, they'll be armed with a nuke. They sold it. Trump and his cabinet, I don't think they necessarily bought it. I think that that was the plan all along. This thing has been cooking for a very long time, a very, very long time, you know, but people are starting to see and understand why this is. This is all Israel's issue. This is their folly. You know, well, it's the mistake of the American politician and the whoever to want to go ahead and participate in this war. But Israel is the culprit. And it shows in the stats. It shows in the polls. People are starting to see that, okay, Israel is the problem. This is why this is occurring, because of Israel. That says a lot.
And Gallup earlier this year was also negative. We're not just talking about the Democratic base anymore. We're talking about the general electorate as well. The general electorate has turned
Democrat and or Republican. People are saying this about Israel now, here in the United States, have no love for Israel. And probably with good reason.
Against Israel. This is not just a left issue. It is an American issue when it comes to opinions on Israel.
What's the trend line here?
What's the trend line here? The trend line is unbelievable. Look at the trend line here. Compare this to Donald Trump's first term. At this point in Donald Trump's first terms, Israel's average net favorability.
Wow.
You go back here. Look at this. It was plus 51 points. Wow, Johnny says. Wow, Johnny says, because this is wow. Plus 51. It's minus 16 points in the average poll now. That is what, a 67-point shift against Israel in just 8 years. Israel used to be a consensus issue in American politics, and that was a pro-Israeli position. Now the consensus has actually shifted, and now when it comes to general electorate, it is a minus. Israel is now seen negatively, and we're seeing it in poll after poll after poll.
In real time, Israel is looked at negatively. The American people has had enough of Israel, the Israeli lobbies, the Israeli regime, and Benjamin Netanyahu. It shows. No doubt about that. No doubt about that. Let me get this last piece here.
Again, take a look here. I never thought I'd see the day military assistance to Israel say U.S. should reduce or end it. Overall, 55% say they should reduce or end it. And it is true across the educational spectrum. 51% of non-college graduates, 62% of college graduates. So this isn't just an issue right among white liberals.
This is actually a real shift taking place in terms of how the American people view the Israeli regime. And again, most particularly Benjamin Netanyahu and his cabinet. You know, people are just tired of what they suspect or what they call manipulation by the Israeli regime and Benjamin Netanyahu and his cabinet.
Democratic primaries. No. This is true across the educational divide. Even when we are looking towards a general electorate, the majority of Americans believe that military assistance to Israel should either be reduced or ended.
Again, what the numbers are showing is we shouldn't just presume that opposition to Israel or aid to Israel is a political loser now. Correct. The numbers just don't seem to suggest that. There's a big Senate race in Michigan.
Why don't they suggest that Israel is a big loser, especially in the minds of Americans? And we may see that also in politics. A lot of politicians are being called to order or being called to stand up and do the right thing. The American people are saying to their elected officials, do your job or we're going to get rid of you. Stop playing with and laying in bed with the Israeli lobby, with Benjamin Netanyahu and that whole crew. The American people are actually speaking this, Democrats as well as Republicans. So are they losing? Absolutely. Absolutely. Israel's favor has wasted away. It's gone. It's gone. And it's going to get worse than what we're looking at here. And this is a CNN poll, but they're using numbers and polls from different, poll companies. It's going to get worse. It's not going to get better. There's no saving favor in the minds of Americans for Israel. There's no, we don't want the Israeli issue here. This is what this is saying.
Right, for an open seat, there is one candidate who is seen as being more opposed to aid to Israel, Abdul Sayed. What are the prediction markets saying about that race?
Yeah, I think a lot of Republicans says, oh, we want to run against Abdul Sayed. We can beat him. Israel, one of the reasons, he's too far out of the mainstream. But take a look at the Kalshi prediction markets. Chance to win the Michigan Senate race. Look at this. El Sayed as the lone candidate, 59% chance, the majority chance of winning that. And of course, this side still includes, he still has to beat Haley Stevens in Democratic primary. She's at 14%. Mike Rogers, the Republican, at 32% chance. So the idea necessarily that Abdul Sayed is unelectable, completely false, because the bottom line is this. Right. Israel as an issue is not the cudgel that I think that a lot of Republicans believe they can use in order to beat Abdul Sayed or these other anti-Israel, or at least wanting to reduce aid to Israel candidate. 2028 New Hampshire GOP primary polls. You go back to February, the Vice President of the United States, J.D. Vance, was absolutely crushing Marco Rubio. Look at that, 53% the first choice. Marco Rubio was just down at 7%. Look at this race now, though. What was a 45-point margin or so, or 46-point margin, has now become just a 10-point margin. Wow. Woof, that is a close.
That is a close race. But again, we're dealing with what we think here at TAP is a shift in the minds of Americans in terms of how they see politics, how they want to be involved in politics, and how they think politics should serve them. One of the things that we recognize is that Americans do not want Israel involved in American politics and or issues. In fact, Americans want them separated, just removed from the process altogether. This is what we're seeing. But a lot of people aren't catching on to that. Again, so, let's go back. All this stuff that is taking place, listen, this all started or was started by Israel. Now they've reeled in Zelensky, have brought him into this conflict. That's an escalation, no doubt. How this thing turns out, it's anyone's guess. But the fact of the matter is, now Zelensky is fighting a war on two fronts. And Iran is fighting a war on all sides, Now they have, in what could be described as, Ukraine at their backs, somewhat. But you got the United States, you have Israel, you have the Middle East, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, UAE, Bahrain, all those players are against Iran. So Iran is fighting a war on so many fronts, and it's everyone's astonishment is, how the hell are they doing this? Wait a minute, Trump, Netanyahu, you guys said they had used up 90% of all their weapons. They have no Air Force. They have no Navy. And yet, they're still sending supplies to Russia, as well as using supplies against the United States, Israel, and countries in the Middle East in that region. How's this possible? Someone got it wrong. So they went and got Zelensky. Now Zelensky, again, that is foolish as it was for him to fall into the trap to fight Russia over an issue that actually Ukraine had nothing to do with. It was NATO and the United States who really had botched a contract and an agreement with Russia about NATO and setting up, nuclear weapons and bringing people into NATO that they agreed they wouldn't bring into NATO. So this all, how this stuff is going to play out is anyone's guess. But from the looks of it, it's not going to end like a lot of people are thinking it's going to end. For instance, Trump couldn't have thought or guessed that it would even be at this stage with Iran that it's at. I'm pretty sure Trump and Netanyahu said, we got them, we're going to lick them. This is why Trump said, hey, give us 4 weeks. We're into 151, 152 days. So something to think about. It's something to think about. In any respect, again, this thing is escalating. It's going to get worse before it gets better. So I like to ask this. I like to ask you viewers, is this a smart move by Ukraine? Even if they aren't running anything, is this a smart Ukrainian strategy? Or is this a dangerous overextension by Ukraine by becoming involved in this conflict with Iran, US, and Israel? Let me know what you think. And while you do, I got an episode 2 for you guys. I think I'm going to put some more content together regarding this right here, because we think that this is very, very serious. You know, when you have these wars, 2 different wars colliding, that's big. That's big news, and we need to stay abreast of what's happening. So we'll continue to do that here. We'll bring you all the news you can receive, you want, or that we can muster up. Stay tuned for TAPS episode 2, when 2 wars collide, okay? Ukraine enters the Iranian conflict, all right? So until next time, you take care of yourselves and each other.
You can murder a liberator, but you can't murder liberation. You can murder a revolutionary, but you can't murder revolution. And you can murder a freedom fighter, but you can't murder freedom.